My family said I was too strange for their events, so I left them off my wedding guest list. They freaked out online. My brother tried to teach me a lesson by breaking into my home, and the judge gave him the real lesson. Hey Reddit, so here's the deal. My family always treated me like the extra puzzle piece that didn't quite fit their picture-perfect little setup, and after years of trying to squeeze myself in, I finally stopped bothering, built a life of my own, and actually found some peace. Just when I thought I was finally out of the blast zone, though, they managed to cross a line I didn't even know they could reach, so let me rewind a bit. My name's Laura, I'm 31, and I work as a camerawoman for this small production company. It's nothing glamorous, but I enjoy it. I'm the quiet person behind the camera, setting up shots, adjusting lights, making sure everything looks decent. Suits me, steady, simple, behind the curtain. Growing up, that vibe didn't work with my family. I've got 2 siblings, Mark and Jenna, and if you ask my parents, they were basically flawless. Mark was the star kid, sports, friends, charm, the whole parade. Jenna was the chatty social one who always had something going on. Meanwhile, I was the quiet kid with a stack of books and a chessboard, the one who liked figuring out how things worked. At home, being different wasn't just noticed, it was treated like an error to fix. My dad used to say I must have been born into the wrong family, and my mom would laugh along even though it never felt like a real joke. They loved loud rooms, big gatherings, and being the center of attention while I liked calm. Whenever they teased me, they claimed it was harmless fun, but it didn't land that way for me. I still remember my 14th birthday. They threw a big barbecue, but it wasn't actually for me. It was to celebrate one of Mark's game wins. Nobody even said anything about my birthday until my mom muttered, "Oh right, happy birthday, Laura," while clearing plates. I shrugged it off, but moments like that stick. Anytime I tried to speak up, I'd get, "You're too sensitive," or, "Don't start drama." So eventually I just talked less. In family photos, I was usually the one behind the camera or half slipping out of the frame. Sometimes they forgot to tell me about dinners or birthday gatherings until after things were already happening, and I'd get a text saying, "We're at Grandma's if you want to come," when they were halfway through eating. You can only accept the accidental excuse so many times. By my mid-20s, I had a small apartment, a decent job, and kept my distance. I still visited once in a while, probably just because it was habit. My mom loved to say, "Family is everything," but I never felt like she meant I was part of that equation. The real breaking point hit when Jenna was planning her wedding. I remember the call so clearly. "Hey Laura," she said in that sugary tone people use when they're about to say something awful but want it to sound polite. "So about the wedding. I think it's better if you don't come." I honestly thought I'd heard wrong. "What?" She went on about how crowded it would be and how a bunch of Mark's friends would be there. Lots of dancing and drinking, and apparently that wasn't my scene. So basically I was being uninvited for being myself. I said, "It's your wedding, Jenna, do what you want." And even though my stomach twisted, my voice stayed calm. She thanked me like I'd just done her a kindness, told me she'd send pictures afterward. When I told my parents, my dad barely glanced up from his newspaper and said, "She's the bride, her choice," and my mom added, "You'd probably be uncomfortable anyway." So I didn't go and I didn't argue. On her wedding day, I sat at home scrolling through social media, seeing picture after picture of Jenna in her dress, Mark giving a toast, my parents grinning like they were living in a commercial. Nobody even seemed aware I wasn't there. That night I microwaved some dinner and watched an old documentary, telling myself it didn't matter, but of course it did. It wasn't about missing the event, it was realizing they truly didn't want me included. Not because I'd done anything wrong, just because I didn't match whatever version of fun they approved of. After that, I quit waiting for invites. If they didn't ask, I didn't go. Simple. I didn't hate them, I just stopped pretending things were different. Once you accept that, you start noticing the smaller signs. Every conversation was about Mark's new milestone, Jenna's new house, my parents' vacations. Nobody asked about my life. They didn't even pretend. So I backed off and put more energy into work, picked up side gigs filming events, saved money. Work made sense, people valued what you actually did, not your place in some family lineup. As I pulled back, the quiet changed me. You stop hoping for warmth where it never existed, and without realizing it, you build these quiet walls that end up protecting you. I didn't know it yet, but those walls were going to turn out to be the best thing I'd ever done for myself. A few months after Jenna's wedding, everyone else slipped back into their routine, but things were different for me. I stopped expecting them to call. If they needed me, they knew where to find me. Then came Mark's big promotion. He got some management job at his company, and my parents couldn't shut up about it. Every call from my mom was her telling me I should learn from my brother, and how hard he'd worked. I texted him congrats and he just pressed the like button without replying. A couple weeks later I was scrolling through social media and saw a photo of everyone celebrating at a restaurant. Balloons, drinks, the whole family at a big table, plus a cake that said, "Congrats, Mark." Even my cousins were there, along with family friends I hadn't seen in forever. Everyone looked thrilled except me because once again I wasn't part of it. I called my mom and asked, "Was there some kind of dinner?" She sounded distracted and said, "Oh, that? It was last minute. His boss picked the place. You wouldn't have liked it, loud music, fancy food." I said it would have been nice to at least be invited, and she sighed like I was causing problems. "Laura, please don't start. It was his night. You know how you get with crowds." Which was her polite way of saying, "We didn't want you there." I didn't argue, I just said okay and hung up. That pushed me to visit even less, and they didn't seem to notice. The few times I did show up, I felt like a guest in my own family. They talked over me, shared jokes I wasn't part of. Barely remembered I was sitting in the room. Thanksgiving that year sealed everything for me. I drove over with a store-bought pie, because my mom always insisted I shouldn't bring anything homemade. "We already have enough," my mom said when I came through the door. And the whole house smelled like turkey and cinnamon. Everyone was crowded around the dining table laughing when I walked in. She gave me a quick hug and said, "Oh good, you made it." We just started setting the table, but the table was already packed. 8 chairs all filled. Mark had his girlfriend beside him, Jenna had her husband, my parents were posted at the ends, and a couple of cousins filled the rest. I stood there for a moment holding the pie I'd bought. I asked where I should sit, and my mom scanned the room like she was only now realizing they hadn't saved me a spot. "There's a folding chair in the garage," she said. "You can grab that." So I did. I went out, found some old chair, brushed off the dust, and dragged it into the corner of the dining room. I ended up with a plastic plate in my lap, and a wobbly chair that didn't match anything. That was where I belonged in that house, apparently. It sounds small, but it summed up everything. Not one person slid over or suggested making room. They just kept eating, passing food over my head like I wasn't even there. At one point Jenna laughed at something Mark said and added, "Laura, you wouldn't get it. It's an inside joke." She was right. I didn't get it. I didn't get why I kept showing up. After dinner I did what I always did, helped clear the table. Nobody thanked me. While I was washing dishes I heard Mark talking to my mom about how his boss wanted to see photos from the party, and she said she'd send the good ones, meaning the shots with everybody in them. Everybody. I left early, telling them I had work the next morning. My mom handed me leftovers like she was checking something off a chore list, and my dad called out "Drive safe," without even looking away from the game on TV. I sat in my car for a minute before starting it, realizing that if I stopped showing up completely, nothing in their lives would shift an inch. Over the next few months I backed off from calling. The times we did talk, the conversations lasted barely 5 minutes. "How's work?" "Fine." "How's Mark?" "Busy." "How's Jenna?" "Planning something." Then they'd hang up. Sometimes Jenna texted me asking if I could fix her laptop or whether I still had my camera, never once checking in on how I was doing. Only popping up when she needed something. One weekend my mom invited me to Sunday lunch, and I figured maybe things were getting better. But when I got there it was just my parents. Mark and Jenna couldn't make it. It felt like they only asked me because the house would have been uncomfortably quiet otherwise. My dad spent the whole meal talking about Mark's new car. And my mom went on about Jenna's kitchen remodel. Nobody asked a single thing about me. I mentioned a short film I'd been working on, and halfway through my sentence my mom cut in with, "That's nice, dear," before jumping back to describing cabinet colors. That ended up being the last family meal I showed up for in a long while. I started spending more weekends on set, picking up extra hours and working alongside people who actually cared about the same things I did. My coworkers weren't perfect, but at least they noticed when I wasn't around. Then one Sunday afternoon my phone buzzed with a call from my mom, and she never called just to chat, so I almost didn't answer. But I did. "Laura, thank God," she said immediately, sounding frantic. "We really need your help." It's Mark's company event tonight, and the videographer canceled. You're good with that stuff, right? I paused and asked, You mean filming it? Yes, she said. Just recording a few parts. Nothing big. You've got that nice camera, don't you? I told her I did, but I asked why they needed me for a company event. She brushed it off. Oh, sweetheart, it's family and Mark's stressed. You know how he gets. We'd really appreciate it. She said it like she was asking me to carry a box to the car. I had no plans that night, so I agreed, thinking maybe this was her way of pulling me back in, maybe a step towards something normal. I packed my gear and drove over to the event center, one of those fancy places with big glass doors and tiny appetizers. I spotted Mark right away in a crisp suit, grinning with his coworkers. My mom waved from a corner table. There's my camera woman, she said. I chuckled, thinking she was joking, but she wasn't. Mark barely glanced at me. Hey, you got your stuff? He asked. I said yes. Cool, he said. We need shots of people mingling, the speeches, then the group photo. Make sure the company banner's in the background. I blinked at him and said I thought they wanted me there as family, not staff. He frowned like I'd asked something ridiculous. You're helping out, aren't you? Same thing. Before I could say anything else, my mom patted my arm and said, Don't make a fuss, Laura. You're good at this. You'll make us proud. So that was it. I wasn't invited as family. I was dragged in as free labor. I started filming because walking out would have caused a scene. I moved around the room getting footage of people laughing and networking. Nobody looked at me. Nobody thanked me. Mark's coworkers assumed I was hired help and kept calling me the camera lady. When the speeches began, I stood at the back beside my tripod. Mark took the mic and talked about teamwork, leadership, and family values of all things. Hearing that almost made me laugh. He thanked everyone for being there. Everyone except me. During dinner, I packed my equipment and sat near the exit to check the footage. My mom walked over with a plate and said, Here, you should eat something. I looked down and saw half-picked leftovers. I told her I was fine. You did such a good job, she added quickly. Mark's boss was so impressed. You'll send the files tomorrow, right? I stared at her and said, So I'm just the videographer now? She gave this weird little nervous laugh she always did when she didn't want to deal with something. Oh, Laura, don't be dramatic. You know what I meant. I know exactly what you meant, I told her. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, but someone across the room called her name. She smiled, patted my arm again, and walked away. After everyone finished eating, Mark announced it was time for a group photo. I picked up my camera, figuring I'd be the one taking the group shot, but Mark waved me over and said, No, not you, girl. You're in the picture. Somebody else can take it. One of his coworkers looked at me and asked, Who's that? And Mark answered, already turning away, My sister. She's doing the video. That told me everything I needed to know. I loosened my grip and let the camera hang at my side while I stepped out of the way. They took their photo, all smiles, and I stayed completely out of frame. When the lights came back up, I packed my gear and walked straight out the door. Nobody stopped me, nobody said goodbye. Driving home, I felt more foolish than upset. I'd spent the whole night helping them shine, literally helping them look polished on camera, and they still couldn't treat me like an actual part of the family. When I got home, I transferred every clip onto my laptop and stared at the footage for a while. Every shot looked crisp and polished, just what they wanted. I'd already wiped the SD cards before heading out of the venue. The laptop held the only copies. I selected all the files and deleted them. It wasn't revenge and it wasn't spite. I just didn't owe them anything. The next morning, my mom called sounding frazzled. Laura, Mark says he can't find the videos anywhere. I told her plainly, I deleted them. There was a long pause before she asked, Why would you do that? And I answered, Because I wasn't working for him. I was helping family, and family doesn't treat people like free staff. She let out a loud sigh. You're overreacting again. Then find someone else next time, I said, and I hung up. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty about saying no. After that night at Mark's event, I kept my distance for real. I quit pretending anything was fine. I stopped trying to be helpful just to earn a seat they never planned to offer me. I worked, slept, and spent weekends tinkering with old cameras or doing small freelance jobs for local shops. It was quiet, but it belonged to me. That's around when I met Evan. There was no perfect movie moment. I was filming a little charity event for an animal shelter, and he was running the adoption booth trying to talk people into taking home these scruffy cats that looked like they'd survived battles. He had this calm, practical kind of energy, talking quickly but listening twice as much. When I recorded him explaining the shelter's needs, he didn't put on a show. He just spoke like a real person, and that stuck with me. When I finished packing up, he waved me over and said, "Hey, camera lady. You never told me your name." I told him Laura, and he said, "Evan, you should have warned me to fix my hair before you filmed." I shrugged and said it looked fine, and he repeated it before laughing, telling me I was honest and he liked that. We kept talking after that. He'd message me about movies or animals or little things from his day. It was easy. No guessing games, no worrying about hidden meanings. When I mentioned my family once, he didn't dig for details, he just said, "Sounds like they don't really get you," and moved on. A few weeks later, he invited me over for dinner. He made pasta that was ridiculously spicy, and we both ended up laughing and chugging milk from the carton to cool our mouths. It felt normal in a way I hadn't realized I'd been missing. As time went on, he became the person I actually wanted to talk to every day. We took walks after work, shared stupid videos, talked about things we wanted to do someday. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone on the outside trying to push my way in. About 6 months in, he introduced me to his family, and I had no idea what to expect. But they turned out to be the exact opposite of mine. His dad shook my hand like he meant it. His mom made enough food to feed an army, and they asked about my projects and interests because they genuinely wanted to know. When his mom learned I worked behind a camera, she told me the world needed more people who notice the things others miss. That comment stuck with me. I started spending some weekends with them, helping repair odds and ends, watching movies, joining their game nights. It felt strange being included without having to earn anything. One night his dad said, "You fit right in." And I had to look away for a second just to keep myself together. Meanwhile, I hadn't talked to my own family in months, and it didn't feel wrong. It felt peaceful. 2 years later, Evan and I got engaged. He proposed in the simplest way, just the two of us walking the same path we'd taken 100 times before. I said yes like it was obvious. No big dramatic moment, just a huge grin and a hug that said everything. When we started planning the wedding, we agreed it should be small, not because of money but because we didn't want it to turn into a performance. We wanted only the people who'd actually been there when it mattered. One night, while we were jotting down names for the guest list, Evan looked up and asked, "What about your family?" I didn't answer immediately. Part of me felt like I should at least try, send an invite, make peace, do the expected thing. People always say weddings bring families together. But I kept thinking about standing at the back of Mark's event hall holding a camera while they laughed without me. I thought about that Thanksgiving, sitting in a folding chair with a plastic plate. I thought about Jenna's wedding and my mom saying I'd be uncomfortable anyway. So finally I said, "No, I don't want them there." And Evan nodded like he already knew I'd say that. "Good," he said. "I want the day to be about the people who actually love you. Not just people who share your last name." That was that. Over the next few weeks we planned things, picked a small outdoor spot, sent invites to coworkers, friends, and a few neighbors who turned into family. It wasn't stressful, honestly it was fun. Each thing we crossed off the list felt like building a life from the ground up, one that was real and ours. And news travels fast with my family. You could sneeze on one side of town and someone's aunt would be asking if you were sick before dinner. So when we started mailing invitations, I knew it wouldn't stay quiet. A cousin saw the venue tag on Instagram and mentioned it to my mom, and soon enough my mom texted, "Heard you're getting married. When are you sending our invites?" That was all my mom wrote. No congratulations, no I'm happy for you, just a question delivered like she was checking on a dinner reservation. I stared at the message for a bit before replying, "There aren't any." Then I locked my phone and went back to what I was doing. 2 hours later, the family group chat that had been silent for months lit up like a Christmas tree. Mom wrote, "I don't understand. You're getting married and you're not inviting your own family?" Dad said, "This is beyond disrespectful." Jenna chimed in with, "Wow, I knew you were pulling away, but this is low." And Mark added, "Guess she finally found someone as cold as she is." I didn't respond. They kept piling on, sending guilt trips, fake concern, and everything they'd perfected over the years. Mom wrote long paragraphs about family unity and how I'd regret shutting them out. Jenna said I was embarrassing the family's name. Dad pushed the line about how I was being ungrateful after everything we've done for you. Everything they'd done for me. I almost laughed. Evan walked into the room holding a plate of food and saw my expression. What happened? He asked. They found out, I said. He sat beside me, scanned the messages, and shook his head. They're not mad about missing your wedding, he said. They're mad they won't have photos to post. And he was exactly right. They didn't care about being part of my life, just the optics. I muted the chat and went back to wedding planning. Every buzz from my phone I ignored. It wasn't anger anymore. It was indifference. I didn't owe them anything. A few days later, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail but listened afterward. Her voice shook like she'd practiced it. Laura, this isn't you. You're letting Evan turn you against us. We're your parents. We deserve to be part of your big day. Deserve, that word again. Then Dad left one too. You can be upset all you want, but this family doesn't turn its back on blood. I deleted both messages. Jenna took her theatrics to Facebook and posted one of those vague rants without names, but with just enough hints. Funny how some people forget who raised them. Hope their little party goes well without their real family. Mark liked it within minutes. Someone must have told them it looked bad, because the next day Mom posted a floral quote about family being forever, and it got a wave of sympathy. The truth was, my family had always been good at appearances. They were just terrible at kindness behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Evan and I kept planning our wedding. We picked a small outdoor venue near a vineyard. Something quiet and simple. Our guest list was short: friends, co-workers, neighbors who had become like family. People who'd actually stuck around through the hard stuff. One night, while working on the seating chart, Evan said, "It's nice knowing every person on this list actually wants to be here." Yeah, I said. No fake smiles this time. The week before the wedding, Jenna sent me one last text. You're making a huge mistake. People will talk. I typed back, let them. Then the wedding day finally came. And it was everything I'd hoped for. Clear skies, soft breeze, nothing over the top. The ceremony was short and real, with my best friend officiating. Evan looked steady and calm, and there wasn't a single second that felt forced. When I looked around, everyone was smiling because they were actually happy for us, not because they wanted good pictures for social media. After everything I'd been through, that meant more than anything. During the reception, one of my coworkers came up grinning and said, "You need to see this." He handed me his phone open to Facebook, and there it was, my family's meltdown plastered online. Mom had written a long rant about children losing their way and forgiveness. Jenna had posted another dramatic complaint about being excluded, and Mark uploaded a picture from their dinner with a caption saying, "Some people forget where they came from." What made me laugh, really laugh, were the comments. Someone replied under Jenna's post saying, "Didn't you not invite her to your wedding?" Under Mark's photo, someone else wrote, "Karma's funny like that." And on Mom's post, a few people gently told her maybe let her be happy. I handed the phone back, shaking my head. "They'll never get it," I said. Evan squeezed my hand and said, "They don't have to." And for the first time, I didn't need their approval. The rest of the night was perfect. We danced under string lights, ate great food, and laughed until we were exhausted. No awkwardness, no forced conversation, no heavy feeling dragging behind me. After the wedding, everything went quiet for about a week, too quiet. I knew them well enough to know silence wasn't peace. Silence was the pause before they tried something bigger. Started with the calls. Dozens of them. First Mom, then Jenna, and even Dad, which was rare. I didn't answer any. The voicemails were a mix of guilt and threats. Mom said, "Laura, you're my daughter. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you'll regret shutting us out. Nobody will love you the way family does." Jenna's voice was sharp. "Congrats on your sad little backyard party. Hope it was worth it." And Dad, ever the serious one, said, "You'll come around eventually. You always do." I deleted all of them. I didn't reply, not once. I wasn't angry anymore, I was just done. Evan and I settled back into our normal routine. We were renting a small place just outside town on a quiet street with tall trees and friendly neighbors. For a few days, it actually felt peaceful again. We cooked dinner together, sat on the porch at night, talked about plans. I started thinking maybe, just maybe, they were finally going to let go. Then, on a Wednesday morning, everything shifted. I was working from home, editing a short film on my laptop while Evan hummed in the kitchen, making breakfast. Around 10, there was a loud knock on the door, hard and fast, not friendly at all. We both froze. You expecting someone? He asked. No, I said. Another round of knocks hit the door louder this time, and then I heard my mom's voice calling. Laura, sweetheart, open the door. We just want to talk. My stomach dropped. I looked through the peephole and there they were, Mom, Dad, Jenna, and Mark, lined up like some awkward family portrait, with Mom holding a casserole dish like it was supposed to fix everything. Unbelievable, I muttered. Evan's face went pale. They actually showed up. Yeah, I said. I cracked the window just enough to be heard. What are you doing here? Mom smiled way too big and said, We wanted to see you, honey. We're worried. You've been ignoring us. I'm not ignoring anyone, I told her. I just don't want to talk. Dad stepped closer, his voice hardening. You can't just erase your family, Laura. That's not how any of this works. It's exactly how it works, I said calmly. You made your choices and I made mine. Jenna scoffed and said, Wow, she really messed you up. Jerking her head toward Evan, who was standing behind me with his arms crossed. You were never this cold before he showed up. Evan didn't say a word, just stayed steady. Mom's fake smile started to crack, though her eyes were still burning through me. Don't talk like that, Jenna, she said, but her tone didn't match her words. Then she turned back to me. Laura, we came to make things right. Let us in. No, I said, simple as that. Dad's jaw tightened. Enough. We're not leaving until you come out here and talk to us like an adult. Evan whispered. They're not going to leave, are they? No, I whispered back. They're not. Mom's voice rose, sharp and shaking. This isn't you, Laura. You're letting him turn you against us. I pushed the window open a little more and looked her straight in the eyes. You did that yourselves. Her smile dropped completely. Jenna muttered something nasty under her breath. Mark, who'd been scrolling his phone the whole time, finally spoke up. This is pathetic, Laura. You're acting like a kid. We just want to talk. You want to talk, I said. When it suits you. The rest of the time I don't exist. That hit a nerve. Mom's voice went sharp and brittle. You'll regret this, Laura. You'll regret turning your back on your own blood. I did, I said. Years ago. She gasped like I'd slapped her. That's when Dad snapped. He stomped onto the porch and started pounding on the door. Enough. We're not leaving. Then you'll be standing there a long time, I said. The banging got more aggressive. Evan grabbed my arm. Laura, call someone. I shook my head, still watching through the peephole. Not yet. Mark joined in, slamming his hand against the siding, while Jenna yelled about how family doesn't treat each other this way. Mom was crying, either real or fake, it was hard to tell. When I heard the door frame creak under the pressure, I finally turned to Evan and said, Call the police. He didn't hesitate. While he spoke to dispatch, I stood planted between him and the door, my heart racing but my mind steady. Outside, Dad roared again. We're not leaving without you, Laura. Then get comfortable, I answered. A loud crack echoed as wood splintered. Someone had tried to force the handle. Officers are on their way, Evan said, his voice steady but trembling at the edges. A moment later the pounding stopped. When I peeked out the window, they were all standing there pretending nothing had happened. Mom clutching the casserole again, Dad glaring at the ground, Jenna rubbing her arms dramatically, Mark scrolling his phone like he'd never been involved. Then came the sirens. A police cruiser rolled up and 2 officers stepped out, a man and a woman. The second they looked at the scene, you could tell they instantly understood what kind of mess they were walking into. I opened the door just enough to step outside, keeping my hands visible. Morning, officers, I said. Thanks for coming. The woman nodded. We got a call about a disturbance. Everything all right? Before I could answer, Mom rushed forward waving the casserole. This is our daughter, she insisted. We were just trying to talk to her. She's being manipulated by that man. She pointed toward the house where Evan was visible through the curtain. The officers kept neutral faces. So you were the ones knocking and yelling? The woman asked. Mom stammered. We weren't yelling. We just needed to talk. Dad tried to take over. We have a right to see her. She's our daughter. The male officer pulled out a notepad. Sir, that's not how the law works. She's an adult. You don't have the right to enter her home without permission. Mom tried to interrupt, but he held up a hand. If you continue harassing her, she can press charges. I took a breath. Actually, I want to. Silence hit the porch like a brick. Mom's jaw dropped. Dad's face went beet red. Jenna froze. Mark finally looked up from his phone with wide eyes. You don't mean that, Mom whispered. I do, I said. Trespassing and attempted forced entry. The officers separated all of us, took statements, and told them they had to leave immediately. Evan came outside once things calmed down and slipped his hand into mine while I finished signing the report. As my family drove away, I watched through the window, Mom crying, Dad yelling, Jenna slamming her door, and Mark already staring at his phone again. When the police left, the house felt quiet in a way it never had before. Evan leaned his head on my shoulder and asked, You okay? Yeah, I said. Finally. The officers explained the case would go to the DA, and immediate arrest wasn't required. The next morning I contacted my attorney. He filed for a temporary restraining order, which the court granted the same day. By Friday, a process server had officially served my parents, Jenna, and Mark. The order barred them from contacting us or coming near our home. After the confrontation, Evan and I took 3 days to ourselves in a small cabin a couple hours away. Peaceful, no crowds, no calls. Before we left, I spent half a day tightening the home security system. New locks, motion lights, and little cameras synced to my phone went up around the house, and Evan teased me for going full detective mode. But he understood why I wanted everything locked down tight. The first 2 nights at the cabin were perfect. Hikes, old movies, sleeping in without alarms. By the 3rd night, I finally felt like the tension had melted off my shoulders. 2 nights later, Sunday at 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Living room. A heartbeat later, alarm triggered. Front door. Evan jolted awake and asked, What's going on? And I said, Someone's in the house. I pulled up the camera feed. The video shook for a second before focusing on a tall figure moving across the living room. I knew the shape instantly. Mark. He was inside our home. He was already breaking the restraining order he'd been served just days earlier. I hit the panic option on the app, and the alarm shrieked through the speakers. On the screen, Mark spun around, yelling and trying to hide his face. Evan whispered he broke in. And I said, Yeah, probably Dad's idea. The feed switched into emergency mode and froze on a still frame while the alarm banner flashed red. Dispatch confirmed officers were on the way. A cruiser showed up about 8 minutes after the siren went off. We didn't sleep again that night. When we got home the next afternoon, the front door was taped off. An officer met us halfway up the driveway and said, Ms. Walker, everything's contained. I asked what happened and he said, Your brother was still inside when we arrived. He claimed he was checking the house for you, but the footage says otherwise. He's in custody. Evan frowned and asked why he would do that, and the officer checked his notes. He told us your father asked him to teach you a lesson. We found matching texts on his phone. We'll be contacting your father next. Inside, nothing was taken. Mark had tried to pry open the office safe but stopped once the siren hit. The police took prints and copied all the footage. Watching it later, I saw him pacing, muttering, panicking once the alarm blasted. He didn't look angry. He looked desperate. 2 days later, the officer called back. Mark was officially charged with attempted burglary, property damage, and violating the restraining order. He'd confessed that Dad offered him money to go talk some sense into Laura, and the texts backed it up. The story spread fast around town. At first, people said it was just a misunderstanding, until the DA filed the probable cause affidavit on Monday. It included redacted screenshots of texts between Mark and Dad pulled from Mark's phone. A neighbor grabbed the PDF from the court portal and posted the images in the local community group. The defenders got quiet real fast. Mom posted online that it was blown out of proportion. Jenna tried saying Mark only wanted to reconnect, but nobody bought it. Comments poured in from people who'd heard the sirens or seen the squad cars that night. Their perfect little image fell apart overnight. The case moved quickly after that. Mark took a plea deal, community service, probation, GPS monitoring. Dad was charged with aiding and abetting and got a fine plus a suspended sentence. Both of them now had criminal records. Mom skipped the hearings entirely. Jenna moved to another town. I didn't attend any of it. My lawyer handled everything. The week after the ruling, my phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts. For once, the quiet felt peaceful. Evan and I finished installing the cameras properly, front porch, backyard, every entry point. He repainted the door frame where the police tape had been. Our life settled back into simple routines again. Groceries, coffee, his soft guitar strumming while I edited footage. For the first time, the house felt like home. 3 months later, we had a small barbecue. A few coworkers came, some neighbors, and the couple who'd called the police that night. They joked about being part of a real-life crime show. I handled the grill while Evan set out the sides. Everyone laughed too loud and ate too slow. But it was the kind of noise that filled you up instead of draining you. As the evening wrapped up, one of my coworkers raised a soda and said, "To new beginnings." I looked around at the lights draped across the fence, the laughter drifting up into the trees, the easy atmosphere with no hidden edge. No pretending. No tension. Just people who chose to show up. Later, while we were cleaning up, Evan asked, "Do you ever think about them anymore?" And I said, "Not really. Sometimes I wonder if they think about what they lost." He smiled and said, "They probably don't get it." "Yeah," I said. "But I do." We sat on the porch as the lights dimmed. For the first time in my life, the word family didn't feel heavy, it felt right. I'd built mine on my own terms, and no one was ever taking it away again. A few weeks later, I stopped by the courthouse to sign some final paperwork. When I stepped outside, I spotted my mom across the parking lot. She looked smaller than I remembered, older, worn down. For a moment, we just stared at each other. She walked toward me, clutching her purse like a shield. "Laura," she called softly. I didn't move. When she got close, she said, "I just wanted to talk." Her voice shook. "You didn't have to make all this so public." "I didn't make anything public," I said quietly. "Mark did when he broke into my house." Her eyes filled with tears. "We're family. Mistakes happen." "Mistakes?" I repeated. "You sent him there. You told him to teach me a lesson." She flinched. "That's not." "It's in the texts, Mom." My tone stayed calm, almost tired. "You didn't come to check on me when it happened. You came to control me. There's a difference." For a second, I thought she might argue, but then her shoulders sagged. "You used to be so kind," she whispered. "I still am," I said. "Just not to people who treat me like I'm disposable." I walked past her without looking back. It didn't feel like a win, it just felt finished. That night, when I told Evan what happened, he didn't say anything. He just held my hand until the shaking in my chest finally settled. After that, they never reached out again. No calls. No letters. Not even the guilt-soaked Christmas cards Mom used to send with glitter snowflakes and Bible verses about forgiveness. In the quiet they left behind, I built something better, something real. The following spring, Evan and I bought a small house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy but perfect for us, with a white porch, lilac bushes, and the soft sound of crickets drifting through the evenings. I turned the spare room into an editing studio, and he hung shelves and filled them with tiny clay animals he sculpted whenever he got bored. We'd wake up early, drink coffee by the window, and talk about the future, maybe adopting someday, maybe even starting our own production company. Life wasn't flawless, but it was peaceful, and sometimes peace speaks louder than applause ever could. One night, an email landed in my inbox from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read from Mom, and against my better judgment I opened it. "Laura, I hope you and Evan are well. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know we think about you. Your father's health isn't great, and Jenna barely speaks to anyone anymore. Mark moved back home. Things are different. You were always the one who saw things clearly. I see that now. Love, Mom." I read it twice, then closed the laptop. I didn't respond. Not because I hated her, but because peace doesn't demand reopening old wounds. When Evan walked in with 2 cups of tea, I smiled. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and for once I meant it. Everything was fine. We sat on the couch while the last of the daylight faded through the curtains. For years, I had believed love meant proving my worth to people who had already decided it wasn't enough. But real love isn't a performance. It's quiet, steady, safe. And for the first time in my life, I had all of that. Time began moving differently after that. Peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes soft and steady, like sunlight slipping through a half-open curtain. The days blended together in the best way. Morning coffee with Evan, easy jokes in the kitchen, afternoons editing footage while he played guitar in the next room, evenings spent cooking dinner or dancing barefoot on the porch. It was a life I once thought I'd never have. 6 months later, a real letter arrived in the mail, handwritten and addressed to Mrs. Laura Walker. The handwriting made my heart jump, my dad's. I opened it at the kitchen table while Evan watched quietly from across the room. Laura, I'm not writing to justify anything. I've had time to think. The hearings, the fallout, the looks from people who used to respect us, it forced me to face things I never did before. You were right to protect yourself. I let pride in your mother's expectations steer too much. I thought I was defending our family, but really I was defending a picture of one. I don't expect forgiveness. Just, when you think of me someday, I hope you remember more than the worst parts. Dad. I set the letter down and didn't speak for a while. Evan reached out and rested his hand on mine. You don't have to answer, he said. I know, I whispered. But I think I already did. I folded the letter neatly, slipped it back into the envelope and put it in a drawer. Not out of anger, but to keep it someplace quiet. That night I stepped onto the porch. The sky was crowded with stars, the air cool and still. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to fit into a space that was never built for me. Silence used to feel like punishment, but now it felt like peace. Evan stepped outside with 2 mugs of hot cocoa. Still thinking about it? He asked. Not really, I said. Feels more like closing a book. He smiled. Then let's write a new one. We clinked mugs together. A year passed. Our small business grew slowly but surely, turning wedding shoots and charity videos into steady work for local groups, small brands, and independent artists. We called it Still Frame Studios, simple, steady, honest, just like us. Every now and then I'd see a glimpse of my family online. A tagged photo or update, just the usual noise. I didn't feel bitterness anymore. Just distance, like watching characters in a story I no longer belonged to. Then one morning, a familiar number lit up my phone. Jenna. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. Finally a text appeared. I know you probably hate me. But Dad's in the hospital. It's bad. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Evan found me sitting at the edge of the bed clutching my phone. You okay? He asked gently. I don't know, I said. He didn't push. I went to the hospital that afternoon. Not out of obligation, but for closure. The hallways smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. When I reached his room, Mom was already sitting beside him. She looked up, surprised, but too exhausted to say much. Dad's eyes opened slowly at the sound of my voice. Laura, he rasped. Hey Dad, I said. He managed a faint smile. You came. Yeah. We didn't talk about the past, not the restraining order, not the break-in, not the years of distance. We talked about small things instead, the weather, the soup, the nurse who kept humming off-key. He drifted off mid-sentence, and I just sat there quietly, watching his chest rise and fall. Mom didn't speak much either. When I stood to leave, she whispered, Thank you for coming. I nodded. Take care of yourself, Mom. Dad passed 2 weeks later. I didn't go to the funeral, not out of spite, but because grief doesn't always belong in the same room as history. Instead, I lit a candle on our porch that night. Evan sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders as the flame flickered. He loved you in his own way, Evan said softly. I know, I replied. I just wish his way hadn't hurt so much. Time softened things after that, the anger, the sadness, even the memories. They stopped cutting and simply existed, pieces of a story that shaped who I was. Years later, on our 5th anniversary, Evan surprised me with a framed photo. Not of us, but of the vineyard where we were married, golden lights through the trees and our friends laughing in the distance. I wanted you to have this, he said. You're always behind the camera. Thought you should be in front of the moment for once. I smiled. You outdid yourself. He grinned. Good. Because I'm not done. Then he pulled out a velvet box, not with jewelry but with a silver key. What's this? I asked. Our new studio space, he said, eyes shining. You and me. Bigger projects. Bigger dreams. I laughed, tears slipping down my face. You think we're ready? I think you've been ready for a long time, he said. The world just had to catch up. The next morning, I unlocked the new studio. Sunlight streamed across the wooden floor. Empty walls. Tall windows. Quiet possibility. I walked to the center of the room and breathed in slowly. For so many years, I'd been the outsider looking in, the forgotten piece at the edge of the picture. But now, for the first time, I wasn't behind the lens trying to make everyone else look perfect. I was finally in focus. Fully, clearly, unapologetically. And when Evan came in behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, I felt something simple and powerful settle in my chest. Family isn't who shares your name. It's who shows up when the world falls apart and helps you rebuild. I smiled, looking toward the window, and whispered, "We made it." Evan kissed my temple and said, "Yeah, we really did." The light shifted warmly across the floor, and I realized this was what peace looked like. This was what home finally felt like.